Trigger on!
Welcome, D-Roll, to the Duckface Diaries. We are a World Trigger read-through podcast aiming to discuss the World Trigger manga, volume by volume. I'm Wensleydale Cheddar.
And I'm HOVIN'S with an H, and this month we're tackling volume 14, which covers chapters 116 to 124, and these are also covered by anime episodes 71 to 73 of Season 1, and as well as Episode 1 of Season 2. And today we have a new guest on.
Yeah, we do have a very special and a very prolific guest. So first time on this show, but frequent guest on the channel. It's LumRanmaYasha, host of Manga Mavericks. Well, they and Colton invited me first to talk about World Trigger. It's actually the first podcast I discussed World Trigger on, which I would really recommend. Also, host of Lum Squad, a podcast dedicated to talking about Urusei Yatsura, and basically the person who knows everyone in manga podcasting Twitter. Lum, is there someone you haven't collabed with?
Oh, there are plenty of people that I've been wanting to reach out to that we haven't gotten on the show yet. Like so many people in the podcast scene and in the community in general. But eventually I'd love to continue to reach out to folks. I mean, we are finally tackling, we're getting on someone that we want to have on for a long time. We're having Nick on from WMR. We had Chris on before, but we're getting both Chris and Nick on a podcast soon, and that's really exciting. We're slowly crossing off kind of the bucket list of folks, I think. Like, one day we'll get folks like Debo Key on. I'd love to, Mike Toole, so many people on our bucket list.
Amazing. I hope you have everyone on. Not just people who talk about manga, just all the people in the world in general.
But yeah, it means the world to me that you invited me on to talk about World Trigger with you guys today. There's a lot of cool stuff in this volume that I really like. This is a really strong stretch of the story. While one might consider it a transitional volume between, major events, I think there's just so much cool character development that pays off in a great way later on.
Yeah, this is my thoughts exactly, and we're going to get into it in our general thoughts. Just to remind you, today's agenda, as usual. So first of all, we're going to do a quick recap of Volume 14, created of course by Daisuke Ashihara, translated by Lillian Olsen, and touch-up and lettering done by our good friend Ace Chrisman, designed by Sam Elsway, and edited by Ray Thirst. Once again, there is no hope. Because Hope Donovan isn't there. Anyway.
But Ray's a great editor. They do such a great job with the series from this point on, so... Yeah,
the work is great. Then we're going to move on to our general thoughts. Then we're going to move on to the Ashihara Comments Corner, where we discuss the volume extras, do a bit of a spoiler corner, maybe to discuss the recent chapters as well. And finally, we'll do a little interview with Lum to ask them, as usual, as we ask our guests, what the World Trigger journey was.
Awesome.
All right. Well, shall we get to the first section?
Yeah, I was gonna take a bit of a pause because you wanted to add something earlier, and I interrupted you, and I felt bad, but.
I mean, it's a bit late. I was going to do, some comments about how, we're looking to complete the set with WMR as well, and, you should get John Cena on to talk about manga on the Manga Mavericks, but it's a bit late now, isn't it?
Oh man, we should get a wrestling guest if we ever cover Real just for the one volume where it's just an entire volume is about a wrestling match between this retired heel wrestler kind of going back into the ring to have a match against his old babyface rival. It's just that's such a great volume. It's a wheelchair basketball manga that for one volume becomes about pro wrestling. It's amazing.
Oh, that's amazing. You should get James Stephanie Sterling on.
Oh yeah, I'll look into them.
Shall we get to the summary?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. As their rooftop conversation continues, Osamu presses Jin on the urgency of Tamakoma 2 needing to avoid loss from here onwards, and believes that him joining is the only way that's possible. He mentions the limited time Yuma has left, and clearly shows guilt for Replica's capture. Jin assures him that what happened was not his fault, revealing that he actually chose the path that would get him hurt and Replica kidnapped. He allowed Chika to continue drawing their attention without saving her early on, in order to avoid damage to the city. While taking on the blame for what happened, Jin informs Osamu that he cannot join the team due to having another pressing commitment, but hints there may exist someone better for the role. After a heartfelt exchange, Osamu lays out his plans to Yuma and Chika, confident that with the top spots racking up fewer points, they'd be able to slowly and steadily climb the ranks. Kazuma and Jin reflect on Osamu's request as they head to an emergency meeting of elite agents. The subject? A predicted neighbor invasion. According to Enedorad the Explorad, an approach from one of Afto's vassal states, Galapola and Vodochrone, is imminent. Their method and goal is unclear, but according to Jin's foresight, they are not targeting any members of the public for the time being. Kido orders them to stay alert for an intercept while keeping the operation on the download to avoid public panic. All out-of-base squads are to be notified, and Amo is noted for the utility of his side effect. Back at Tamakoma Base, Konami and Composed Beefcake reflect on Osamu with his path going forward. When questioning on who the team candidate Jin mentioned might be, the two A-rankers are stumped, but to Yotaro it seems obvious. Jin meant Hughes. Hughes and Yotaro reveal Jin's bet to Osamu, theorizing that his joining was a condition of it, but Hughes dismisses the notion of working with them. Reiji and Konami doubt even the logistics of the idea, but just then Chika and Yuma arrive to announce their departure to HQ. Osamu joins them with intent to consult none other than our favourite Explorad on their newfound neighbourly acquaintance. After Kinuzo lets them in, we learn that Chief Engineer Terashima has been bribing information out of Enedorad by showing him movies. The specifics of which vassal state is going to invade seem completely unknown to him, though he's certain they are coming, since Meiden going after Afto would be far from ideal. Ongoing infighting over a new mother trigger would render dealing with outsiders far more difficult. He also tells Osamu that it'd be best not to tell Hughes of this invasion, since he'll be looking for any means home possible. In response, Osamu asks for an elaboration. However, before we can hear this, we're introduced to the stealth and acquisition exercise, where Chika and Izuho are training. Here we learn Chika is actually able to successfully snipe people during training, much to the surprise of Yuzuru. Chika racks up a surprisingly good score due to her hiding instinct that Composed Beefcake trained her to hone. Yuzuru raised her issues of sniping people, and Chika recites her mentor's advice that she has to slowly get used to it. However, she shows clear awareness that it needed to be dealt with as soon as possible out of obligation to the team. Reflecting on his memories of Katahara's sense of inadequacy, Yuzuru suggests he might be able to help Chika if she follows him somewhere.
Yuzuru takes Izuho and Chika back to Kakaura's squad's room, where the very excited operator Hikari is so surprised that Yuzuru has brought the girls over. But although she offers them some tangerines and sitting at the cookout table, they instead go to the training room because Yuzuru has a trigger that he wants Chika to try, because he's identified that her problem in these rank wars is that even though she knows that she isn't actually hurting people, she can't stand the visual of seeing them blown up, because she imagines in her mind what if they were flesh and blood. And Yuzuru identifies if Chika can be confident that she knows she's not hurting anyone, then maybe she can pull the trigger when it counts. And so he introduces her to the lead bullet. The lead bullet is a very non-lethal bullet. It basically is this big, heavy, a cylindrical block, a hexagonal block, that basically, really slows a person down when they're hit by it, because it's just so big and heavy. And because of Chika's extraordinary levels of Tryon, the normal weaknesses of using this bullet, that it's too slow, that it requires too much Tryon, are mitigated, so she can use this very effectively. And so they decide to begin training Chika with the lead bullet. And Yuzuru thinks to himself that he wants to help her because he doesn't want her to be ruined as Hachihara was by her inability to not shoot or not hurt people. Meanwhile, we cut back to Osamu and Yuma interrogating Enidorad about Autocrator, and he finally spills the beans about what Autocrator is like, and basically explains that this is a whole Game of Thrones-esque political hierarchy situation. There are a bunch of houses, there's a fiefdom, a lot of vassals, houses on the dominion of lords, and then many more houses beneath those vassal houses. They're basically 4 big factions, 4 big groups of smaller houses. All of them have their own territory in Africator, so it's all a factionalized country, but they're all united through the war effort with other countries. One of the warlords is Hyrain, and he's trying to gather trigger users for his house, because the more trying you have, the bigger territory you can control, the more you can keep the citizenry in line. And so that's why they, kidnap Medanites, Earthlings, for that Treon supply. But, even though Africator is technically at peace, there's a problem because the god of the planet is going to die in a few years. And, if the god dies, everyone goes down together because there ain't no territories, factions on a dead planet. So this is an opportunity for the lords to exploit, though, because if one of the lords can find themselves a new god, then basically their faction is going to have more power. Each of the 4 lords are on their own quest to find the next sacrificial god for Africator. And where Husei fits into this, and I love Yuma's comments of like, hey, I thought this was a story about Husei. Get to the point. Where's Husei? Whenever Husei's not on screen, we should be asking, where's Husei? Well, Husei wants to return home to his home planet, but unlike Pucci, I don't think there's actually a barrier to that. Because as Enidora...
Oh my god, that's a great comparison. I didn't think of that.
Because as Enidora explains, Hyrain is a pessimist, so he expected that the mission would fail and he wouldn't find someone fit to be a god. But his plan was, even though they might not find a new god in Medan, he would have one of his own vassals with the highest level of Tryon be the next god. He's going to use, Husei's master as basically the sacrifice. And normally, if you would sacrifice your own vessels, you get people mad at you, but Hyrain is just so, power hungry, he's willing to turn a blind eye to that. But basically, yeah, that brings us to, where's Husei? Why is Husei involved in this? Basically, they explain that Husei's master, he's more like a foster parent to Husei. Husei was kind of adopted by him and raised him kind of like one of their own. Husei probably was aware of the rumors that Hyrain was planning to sacrifice his master, but Hyrain probably evaded the topic and also misled him. And then Enidora explains that, Hyrain's whole plan was really he was going to always leave Husei behind. And basically, he fooled Husei into thinking that, he was kind of in the in-group by also telling him, hey, we are going to leave Enidora behind. So basically, Hyrain was playing both of them, so think they were, tricking the other person, thinking they were part of the in-group that was tricking the person they were going to cast away, and that's how he was able to get rid of them both. Enidora explains that Husei's probably figured out what Hyrain's scheme was and why he abandoned him, and also tells them it's probably very likely that he's going to try and take the next possible opportunity to go back to Africator when the allied invasion force makes their move, whether it's Galapar or Rotogrin. Tamakoma is instructed to watch Husei closely so he doesn't make a move. Yuma asks Osamu, hey, you were very interested in Husei. Are you really considering him to be our 4th member? And Osamu's like, well, she's not sure about it yet. And there are a lot of these other factors that are going into this, but knowing what he wants is going to be valueless because they too want to go to Africator at some point. So they could potentially form an alliance with him. Meanwhile, we check back in with Chika, training with Yuzuho, and she fires a lead bullet. It's very slow, but very effective because a bunch of cylinders trap her in there. And so, basically, they're all strategizing about like what is the most effective gun for Chica to use, like what is the most effective strategy, and Chica is just enjoying being able to strategize with friends her own age, and also confesses to Yuzuru and Uzuho that she doesn't want to like bother Osamu and Yuga with her problems, like she wants to deal with her inability to shoot on her own. Then meanwhile we check in a bunch of the A rank agents kind of meeting up with each other, trying to ask about or think about like what is the enemy like as they're trying to strategize here. And that's where we cut into seeing the Galapola team having their own strategy meeting. We also cut back to Hyusei also getting informed that Galapola and Rotokrin are potentially going to make their move soon, and Hyusei thinking about like, yeah, if I can take advantage of this opportunity and maybe I get home. And then Yotaro comes in to like comfort him of like, hey, don't worry, you'll be able to go home someday, and offers him to pet Raijimaru's tummy, which, you know, Hyusei politely declines. But yeah, back to Gatlin and the Galapola team. He says to them that their orders are to stall Miden, and because their goal is to just make it so they can't go after Krator. And so their plan is just to attack the Miden base. And they're not going to capture people and take them hostage because they don't want them to go after them instead, which is another idea, another trick of and after Krator, is that if they were to take hostages or whatnot, then that would divert Miden's attention towards them. So instead, they are only going to play along and go one step of the mission, which is just to stall Miden, and it's by attacking their base. Yeah, they also announced, like, even though, like, Rotokrin didn't send soldiers, they sent a bunch of, like, dogs and Idras, so they have a fairly good fighting force to make their move. Yuma, he's lost in the hallways. He's lost and encounters Kakizaki, Kako, and Kako offers Yuka to join his squad. He declines, and this throws Kakizaki for a loop. And then we cut to the Arashiyama squad training room, where Osamu's come there to to return something to them, and Arashiyama isn't there. And he apologizes for not being able to, like, take what they taught him and, make a victory out of it. But, like, he's asked, hey, did you learn from your loss at least? But he doesn't know yet what he can do, how to, like, effectively do that. So he's told that, hey, maybe Katora can help you, because Katora was in the same boat as you once, because she had a hard time early on, because she didn't have a lot of Tryon.
So, Kitora's struggle at the start was that she didn't have enough Tryon to be a gunner, but after adopting Scorpion and joining Arashiyama squad, she became the race nonetheless. She declines to help Osamu, however, saying that it's not facing reality to expect to be able to complete with top B ranks with just a few training sessions. So Tokieda, the shipper on deck, is like, whoa, she thinks she could complete with them in just 2 years of training. She must really believe in him, and she's really being hard on Osamu because she sees herself in him. And Kitora's like, no, I'm just a dick. And Osamu suspects that Kitora must have an idea, but Kitora points out that what cheek he has to just expect her to give it to him. Like, Ninomiya had to beg Izumi to teach him, and he's the strongest shooter in the first place. So Osamu indulges Kitora's domination kink, and she shares with him her bondage trigger. Let me start this again. So Osamu begs for Kitora's help, and she shows him the secret weapon that could let him support his squad. Spider, a wire trigger whose color you can adjust to make traps. They're easy to spot upon close inspection, but can transform the battlefield into a favorable one for the acrobatic cougar. Kitora's help is to Osamu as close to perfection as possible, and really makes him look forward to the match. We cut to Kako trying to recruit Yuma again, saying that they only recruit people with the initial K, which of course makes Cougar think of the hit song Keija Vu from his home planet. Kakizaki not being her type, Kako tries to bribe Yuma with customized weapons, but she soon has to make a show of taking him by force. And then Kageura shows up to fight over the neighbor, much to Kakizaki's shock. But then Osamu summons, so Yuma has to go. We're soon introduced to another competitor to Tamakoma, captain of the B-rank number 9 Katori squad, Yoko Katori, who complains about being put on defense duty just before a match. She doesn't take her opponents seriously, she doesn't seem to, and won't even watch the logs, which her teammate Rakuro Wakamura has a serious problem with. The Katori squad attacker Miura just tries to keep the peace between Katori and Wakamura's borderline abusive relationship, while the operator Hana scolds them over the intercom. Then we cut to Gallipoli, which is obviously the Poland who actually managed to interspace. They have been spying on the agents through dog-shaped Recon Trine soldiers that Lump previously mentioned. As the reserves of pickles, pierogi, and vodka run out, they make the preparations to attack at sunset. So Captain Gatlin proclaims, "Kurva! Our target is the Medan expedition ship!" And Jin senses a change in the future crossroads and alerts the A-ranks to protect the base. He leaves Konami with an ominous message. As he tells her to go after Tachikawa, he says that he saw the future when the number 1 attacker gets cut down. As Border prepares its defense, Hughes is monitoring the situation on the radar. Jin orders Yotaro to stay on guard duty to protect him, but the wee lad falls asleep early. Hughes can thus sneak out, sadly unable to find the Lamberis, his powerful trigger. His plan is to meet up with Gallipoli and convince them to take him home. As he exits the building, he takes a look back at the shining light behind the window, quietly thanking Yotaro for the good times they had. All the snipers converge on the higher buildings on the battlefield to shoot at the humanoid soldiers marching on the base in groups of 3, the Idras. The snipers combine the firepower to break up the shields, while the gunners support them from the flanks. In response to this, the Gallipoles shoot up fireworks, summoning dogs from small gates. This occupies the snipers for a bit, but Arafune and Composed Beefcake have got close combat covered among the snipers. The S-rank human power level sensor Armo senses trouble. 3 neighbors disguised as Trine soldiers have infiltrated HQ with a permeation trigger. Gatlin says, "Kurva! Everything is going according to plan! This'll be done in 10 minutes!"
Damn, dude swears while things are going well? Is he Australian?
Gallipoles have to say kurva at the beginning of every sentence, otherwise it wouldn't be accurate. To the fictional world trigger. Anyway, general thoughts?
Let's do it. Okay, so there's a lot of, like Lum said, there's a lot of very juicy stuff in this volume. I think the first thing that really struck out to me is this interesting new perspective on Jin's foresights. And I think what I really took away from it is that Jin blames himself in a similar way that Osamu blames himself. And he tries to use that blame to alleviate the sense of it from Osamu and leave it on him. But Jin and Osamu are both the same in that they are only able to act to the best ability with what they have. So Jin should probably listen to his own advice on that regard, as the little interaction before the Gallipola invasion kind of cemented.
Yeah, definitely. Jin and Osamu don't seem to be like similar characters from the get-go, but they definitely have some similar qualities. Lum, what did you think about the volume?
Again, I thought this had a lot of really interesting world building in terms of learning more about After Couture and the different factions in there, and like all this politicking is why they are invading Earth and Medan, attacking and kidnapping people, and then like what Hiron's like real goal and all of it was. Like the entire invasion was a pretense. Really, like, yeah, they were trying to, kidnap people with like high tran levels, but his real goal, failing that they couldn't find a new god, was just to leave behind the biggest obstacle he had in his backup plan to use Yuse's master as a sacrifice instead. And so I think that adds an interesting wrinkle into like understanding like what the villains' goals are, and also it adds a wrinkle into like, oh, well now Husei kind of might have a reason to ally with us because he was, betrayed for a very specific reason why he needs to return home in a very soon manner, and so that gives him a reason to cooperate with them. But also he independently might take advantage of going back to After Couture with this like allied invasion force of either Gallipola or Rotokrin. So I thought, there was some really interesting like plot wrinkles that were introduced there that also added some interesting new layers to certain characters too. And in general, I appreciate the development we see for Chika and Osamu in this volume. Like I mentioned before, I like Chika. She doesn't want to necessarily bother her teammates with her ability, like her lack of ability to shoot people in these matches, but she does want to be of support to her team. And then she kind of gets some nice support from, people who can recognize like what she's lacking and what her obstacle is, and she learns a new skill that she can utilize effectively in these matches going forward. So I really like seeing that. I like seeing Osamu kind of realize, oh, he and Hikatora had more in common in a way, and he learns this new skill in Spider that he can use in a really clever, strategic way. Like, he doesn't have to worry about hitting people now if he can just be a good support player for his teammates and create environments using the Spider in which, like, his teammates have an advantage and he can just slow down the movements of their opponents. And I think that's a cool new ability for him to start learning. And, this is a spoiler thing, but I really pay attention during the Gallipola scene of, like, who is asking what questions. And one character in particular I was paying attention to in that, based on what we learn about them later on and what he is asking Gatlin. And, yeah, I don't know if Ashihara had planned some of the stuff for that character as early on as this, but I going into this knowing later plot events, like that's what I was trying to pay attention to see, like, were there some early signs of his from our very first meetings with these characters of like what's really going on with Gallipola. And I also like kind of how Gallipola, even though they are like basically, a vassal state of After Couture, how they also are trying to protect themselves, like, while being compliant with their orders, but, like, also not trying to draw any attention that puts themselves at risk. So they're trying to work, they have to work for After Couture, but they're also trying to work against them for reasons too, which I really also appreciate seeing, like, these different nuances between these different factions in the neighbor world, and like how that's all leading up to these conflicts that are going to play out in the upcoming invasion.
I think one thing that the further fleshing out of After Couture in this volume really made me think about is After Couture and its vassal states as both a mirror and a contrast to Border, because they are similar to Border in that a lot of the time it's very factionalized, and often the way that the factions best work together is by having some kind of common goal and some kind of leverage to do that. But then, at the same time, you have a very strong contrast in that their lack of loyalty will mean that they constantly give information away. They put their loyalty with Hughes on the line. They have Enadorad is perfectly open to just spilling all of their secrets. Whereas on the other hand, with Border, you have this very strong sense of camaraderie between the agents and between the squads in how that they want to get better. In this very volume, you have that incredibly sweet scene of Yuzuru and Izuho helping out Chika, even though they are from completely different squads, which isn't something from the limited amount we've seen that I could really see the After Couture neighbors doing.
After Couture is all factionalized with like all these people, even within their own factions, kind of working against each other. Meanwhile, the Border agents, like we're seeing, are all cooperating, helping each other out, even if they're different squads, even if they're squads competing against each other. Like, we do see camaraderie of wanting to help uplift other people in their own ranks because they all have this shared collective goal at the end of the day.
I just had a thought. Obviously, you made the comparisons to like A Song of Ice and Fire, to these political intrigues, to this battle, the clash between the opposing factions, which must eventually happen. In the background, there is the conflict of the dying world. We have this kind of, I don't know, climate change analog, how humanity has to eventually like get together to clash with a common problem. I hope it doesn't go the same route with the final season of Game of Thrones.
Well, who is the Daenerys figure in this series then?
Chica, why did you decide to become the God Trigger? Chica, why did you murder all of Border?
Wow, you sure went from not wanting to shoot people to committing mass genocide really fast, all being considered.
I can't be a burden to my team!
So I will kill everyone who gets in their way!
Oh, that would be amazing. Yeah, I enjoyed this volume very much. I think it was a perfect encapsulation for me of how, despite being low stakes matches at the surface, the rank wars still have a lot of character tension that make it exciting. In addition to Chica's and Osama's growth, we get the revelation about Jin's guilt, and not really a revelation. It was just confirming what we basically already knew, already the story alluded to, and a reminder of Yuma's life being on the timer. When I first read this, Gallipoland seemed to like an unnecessary low-stakes detour for me, but with the hindsight of where it actually goes for the series, I did really enjoy it, and I think it works well as a reminder who the A ranks are, and it's a good character focus on Hughes as well.
Yeah, I really like the upcoming Gallipola invasion arc. I think it is a good opportunity for us to see some of the A-rank agents in action again, as well as some of the B-rank squad agents that kind of we won't be seeing in the later matches of the rank wars, like a revisiting NASA squad and stuff. So, and of course, everything involving Hughes is so important too, because it informs stuff that'll happen later with him. As well as, again, they're very interesting seeds of there's even more going beyond Gallipola than what we are even introduced to here that gets revealed in a really cool way later on.
Yeah, we'll get into it in the spoiler corner.
Speaking of the Hughes stuff, this is the first volume where I've started watching along with the anime, because I watched season. I'm watching along with season 2 with its first episode, and I think one very interesting thing about how, because they've rearranged things to make it more conducive with a season ending and a season beginning, all of the Gallipola stuff is kind of pushed to the first episode of season 1, and all of the Tamakoma training and like Hughes build-up stuff on Osamu's end is just kept in season 1. Whereas, and this is interesting because I like the starting episode of, I'd say the manga has a better flowing story, but the starting episode of season 2 does a really interesting job of reframing things on Hughes, of how you start off with that meeting with the Gallipola crew, and so you're starting from the neighbor's perspective, and they're talking about what they're doing, and then you cut to a very alien-looking shot of Tamakoma HQ. Like, it's framed in a quite an unusual way, and you get the first scene with Hughes. So it is kind of a nice way of thematically tying the arc together, even though it doesn't. If you're just binging through it in one go, it doesn't quite tie together as smoothly.
Yeah.
And that's a cool way to do it, because from Gallipola's perspective, like, Border, I mean, they are the aliens. They are, like, kind of the unknown kind of enemy force. So I do like also putting it from that perspective. And even for Hughes, like, at this point, like, he is still in a land of strangers, basically, that he's trying to, like, figure out a way to escape back home from.
Yeah, I don't really think about this, but this actually sounds like a great way to. This reframing sounds like a great way to reintroduce all of these characters, because, oh god, World Trigger has so many characters.
I mean, you say that, like, one thought that occurred to me watching it is, oh god, I don't think this first episode is so much more inside baseball than I remember. I don't think it's very good for anime onlys, because it's like the title cards for each of the Galapola crew members go by so quickly that you can't even read them. It's very clearly like acting on like the idea that you've read the manga beforehand.
Yeah. I don't think you could start with season 2, honestly. So might still be better off like reading the manga.
Season 2 is a great treat if you've read the manga and want to see a part of it like animated really well.
Yeah. I thought Hughes's backstory, just to come back to that, is like a great example of how Ashihara is able to develop a character in an interesting way by placing them within a larger part of the setting. Which is the conflict of the House of Eren. And Edora relays the urgency of Hyraine's plot, like the stakes of the sacrifice, if Chika is not captured, how the world is dying, and then reveals how Hughes is tied to all this through his lord being planned as the sacrificee. That's a word in English, I'm sure. Yeah, Hughes was always defined by his unwavering loyalty, but now we know who exactly he's loyal to, since he was betrayed by Hyrane and he was antagonistic to most of the people within his squad. But now he's also defined by the urgency of his mission, in addition to implicitly being a danger to Chika, because capturing her would save his master/foster father. So, as we anticipate him joining Tamakoma 2, at the same time, we kind of think, okay, how is this going to turn out long term, right?
I think one thought I had is maybe this volume would have been better to do before the Border Briefing Files one, because Hovin forgot. The reason we didn't recognize Terashima in the Border Briefing Files episode is because he was introduced here. I only have to wonder how annoying Enedorad is to watch movies with.
I do love the fact that the chief engineer Eric Cardman works under head of research and development Peter Griffin.
No, Anadora, those are my cheesy poops.
Anadora, I'm seriously.
No, Anadora, that's a bad Anadora. Screw you, Anadora. I'm going home.
Anadora is just like, can you see Terminators on screen?
I do love how nothing can interrupt the rank wars. As Shinoda rules, no. Everything will be in order. All the squads that are engaging in the rank wars are going to be in the rank wars, and nothing can interrupt this. No, I don't care if this poses a danger to the city.
I mean, they really are committed to just maintaining this pretense of normalcy that everything's going up fine, even with an impending invasion. It makes sense they don't want another PR thing to deal with, and they don't want to hinder their upcoming invasion plans and recruitment necessities, but at the same time, it probably couldn't hurt to just say, hey, today's a break day for the rank wars. All squads just stay on standby,
I kind of joke. It's probably like, oh yeah, we're confident in our force. We don't need to like engage everyone.
I think also just like the issue of they want to be prepped for the away mission as soon as they can be, and they have Jin's assurance that members of the public and agents won't be targeted. And I guess until that changes, they are going to take that very kind of still dubious position of let's not let anything slip.
Coming back to like the preparations for the invasion, now that I think about it, Ashihara, what in God's name made you make the A rank number 1 and number 2 captains so similar? When Fukushima and Tachikawa are in the same room, I feel like my mind is exploding.
Yeah, I get the names of them mixed up all the time, alongside Arashiyama. So it's like they just, I guess because they all end in a similar sounding syllable.
To me, it's just the designs, same hair color and goatee, so... I do have a minor nitpick about the preparations, why exactly we need to hear that the invasion response is going to be carried out in secret, as we mentioned twice.
Yeah, Kinuta brings it up.
Yeah, first they want to show off the border stuff, and they talk about it then. Okay, Ashihara, you want us to find out about this through Osama and Yuma because they're still our protagonists? Sure, that's perfectly valid, but why do both? It's a minor thing. I don't think we need it.
Yeah, you could have easily folded the scenes onto each other so that the first introduction, so that you just get a shot of the meeting starting, you get Kinuta, a panel, you get Kinuta explaining what they're doing, and then you can kind of cut back to the meeting to explain more details that aren't given to Osamu and Yuma, I guess. To just kind of fill in the blanks that they would learn certain bits of it. But yeah. One moment with Yuma, there was one moment with Yuma that I did strike me a bit, is when he goes, yeah, it would be pretty difficult to get a neighbor on our side, right? And then Osamu completely disregards this concern, and he has like a little panel where he kind of looks at him, and it's like, oh, he notices that comment. And I do have to imagine, does him giving those concerns in the first place and having his response, it might show some kind of internalization of anti-neighbor sentiment? And it probably feeds into why he trusts Osamu so much and why he's so quick to dismiss Kako's recruiting of him.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mostly looked at that panel and thought it's that's a strange thing to draw attention to, and it kind of falls into the trap of what I think is kind of weakness of the series in that it sometimes overstates Osamu's accomplishments, but in this case his kind of lack of prejudice in that regard. But
I think it's more a case of a lot of other squads are just kind of an unknown in that regard, because he is absolutely certain that Osamu does not care and is going to be very loyal to him regardless of that, and he doesn't have that assurance with the other squads.
Right, I get you.
A lot of the other squads most of them don't know he's a neighbor.
That also makes sense that Yuma just wants to stick with his friends, like Asama and Chika. So, I mean, he wouldn't think twice about just turning down Kako. Because they're all going to work together to go on the away mission together. That's his camaraderie. But yeah, I do appreciate that earlier scene where, Yuma asks Asama, hey, it might be tricky to get Fusey on because he's a neighbor. And Asama's like, well, you're a neighbor too. That's not really a factor for me. And yeah, Yuma does have expression oh, Osamu wasn't, that wasn't something that Osamu was worried about, really. He was thinking about other things that could be an issue and getting Fusey on the side. So I did appreciate that a lot. It's a small, subtle little detail.
Just to go back to a bit that I found funny in the heartfelt conversation between Osamu and Jin. Osamu's like, oh yeah, I checked the rules and I can recruit you, Jin. It's not against the rules. I mean, by which I mean I let Usami check the rules. Damn it, Osamu, do your own Googling.
I don't know how to use smartphones.
I do love the idea of Osamu, the mastermind tactician. What are these computers you speak of? We haven't seen them in a while, but I do love the lead bullets sound effects. They are amazing, just to praise Ace's craft.
Speaking of Ace's highlights, I love Hughes smugly eating his noodles with a gif after stating that he won't work with Kamakoma.
Oh,
it's a very nice...
That was just a great transition. It's they're all asking, who did you mean? Who is that person that is right by us that I should recruit? And then Yutaro's like, oh, he obviously meant you. And then we just see him eating noodles on the couch.
That is great. I do love that the chapter when Yotaro suggests Hughes should be the next Tamakoma teammate is called Yotaro Rindo. He's the for a few panels and still gets a chapter named after him.
I mean, he makes a very perceptive suggestion. So, hey, that's a good character moment for him.
I think one comment from the Boulder Briefing File episode that I am going to walk back a little is leaning into Izumi as a singular parallel for Osamu, because I think this volume did further emphasize that the idea that there are characters can be similar to other ones in multiple characters in different ways, both comparing Hatahara to Chika and in also drawing a parallel between Kitora and Osamu. And obviously Osamu isn't going to fight in exactly the same way as Chika, but he still has things he can learn from her. Kitora, yes.
I did found it interesting, just to go back to the sound effects that went on in chapter 106 at all. That was quite interesting. I found it quite cute that Shinoda still acknowledges Replica as a person and always refers to them as a special advisor.
I like that Jin also always refers to Replica's Professor Replica.
One thing, it's interesting how Azuma always seems to take up a leadership role within the B and C ranks in terms of base defense. Because he had the snipers on the roof in the invasion arc, in the large-scale invasion arc, and now he's tasked with commanding the B rankers who are in the rank wars in an emergency scenario. It very much feeds into his idea as a natural mentor, and someone who, despite being in B rank, has the experience of an A ranker.
Oh yeah, was that revealed yet, that he used to be A rank? Or?
I mean, I'm pretty sure he's deliberately in B rank. I don't think he fell down there. I think he's there specifically so that he can train up more up-and-comers.
Hovin, we did cover last episode that he used to be the captain of the first A-rank number 1 squad, along with Ninamiya, with Kako, and with Miwa.
Yes.
Speaking of which, I do really like how in this volume he kind of takes on a mummy role to Miwa and is like, hey, you doing okay? You have a lot of conversations with your friends. Have you become more sociable?
Please, my angsty son. A lot of my other observations are relating to the anime. I mean, first of all, it really is something how much of a glow-up Season 2's pilot is over the chapters it covers. It's like that shot of Kotori squad killing those Trion soldiers in particular. It's just like a brief page in the manga, and it's such a well-realized action scene in the anime. It's very impressive. And also just there was interesting, like, the translation in the Crunchyroll and the Viz one are slightly different, with one comment Kotori made, which was, when Wakamura points out that Kako squad tried to recruit Yuma, in the Viz one, she's like, don't remind me that I wasn't recruited. Whereas in the Crunchyroll, it's, are you nagging me that I wasn't recruited? And I think I slightly prefer that one, because it's like, it's very much implying how they rile each other up, and how she immediately, like, reads his comment as trying to have a dig at her, whereas, like, the first one feels a lot more passive. I don't know which one is more accurate, or because I don't know the dialogue in either Japanese, but it's just on a pure, just dialogue level, I do slightly prefer the second one.
Yeah, I think it fits her character very well.
I do have a couple more notes. So Wensleydale forgot the lightning/lead bullet combo was a Hatahara idea, but that she lacked the trying to fully realize it, which was a neat touch. I think we talked about this before, but after Krator's vassal system seems to be more similar to the one in like medieval England rather than continental Europe. So your vassal's vassal is your vassal. The top dog, Hyrain, really controls everyone there.
I think that's one thing I'm interested in. Is like Hyrain is one of these 4 like lead nobles of these 4 different factions. So like what I want to see what like the other 3 are that are like competing with his faction to have like the most political influence that after Krator.
Yeah, definitely. Also, oh fuck, Ukulele is free now on Epic Games Store. Oh, got to get that. Anyway. Sorry.
So, apologies, listeners. You will probably be too late to get it.
Aww.
One of the things art-wise that I thought were the weakest in this volume, but incidentally quite funny, seeing Gatlin from behind.
Oh yeah.
Ashihara is a great artist with 2 weaknesses: slouching people and like drawing people from behind.
Yeah.
He looks like his chest is on his back. His head is just turned over 180 degrees. It's so uncanny.
It's such an awkward angle. It does look like he's like turning his head around and he's like facing, he's looking back at them when he's like supposed to be facing front forward. Like the way that a shoulder is drawn, the muscle of it also looks like it should. I mean, it looks like it should be right, but there's also some awkwardness to it, some flatness to it. It is such a weird pose, how I look at it.
Yeah. It seems like it should be his back, but it doesn't look like it.
We shouldn't see his like neck muscles, I think. If we had those erased, I think the effect would play off more.
On a more positive aesthetic note, I really like the way Yuzuru wears the Kageura squad uniform. Like with the open collar, I kind of with the others I get it almost looks more like they're wearing a big jacket, but with him it's like it's kind of a bit sleeker. It's a really cool look, which we don't really see as much in the field because I think he's usually got the bagworm on there.
Volume cover is really cool though. Kage retroactively continues the trend of aces introducing aces from the subsequent match. In this case, it's Kakizaki's the captain, but I would say that Teria is the ace. I guess she's built up later as that.
I feel like the idea of Kakizaki's squad isn't really that any one of them is an ace. I feel like the two juniors are very talented in fairly equal measure.
Potentially aces in the making, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're both very skilled up-and-comers, and Kakizaki, has this feeling oh, am I holding them back? Am I a good enough, leader for him?
My last random observation is Mirai saying, "It's good to be young," to Yuzuru. Girl, why are you talking like an old lady? You're 17 years old, hon.
Yeah, do you have experience in relationships? Are you, dating around and stuff? What is your experience? Do you have that much more experience than Yuzuru to really, say, go live the lifetime of your youth? You're not that far apart in age.
Now I want to give her an old lady voice in World Trigger Bridge, which is definitely ongoing.
It's good to be young, Yuzuru.
Oh dear.
Shall we move on to Ashihara Comments Corner?
Yeah, let's do it. I've only just noticed that, Ashihara began his career at 27. That's my age. At SMH, I guess I won't become an award-winning mangaka after all. Yeah, the volume introduction gives us an introduction to the rank wars and a story so far summary, and I'm not sure if they were probably there before, but it's the first time I really paid attention to that. I have noticed a slight error in the character pages.
Yeah, they call Yuiga Ninomiya. What? Was he related to him? That threw me for a loop because I forgot what the dude's name was really. No, that's not his name. I didn't think he was related to that Ninomiya.
No, it's like Takeru Yuiga. So it shouldn't be. I guess someone mistook the weakest A rank for the strongest B rank, which fair, but
hold on. Where are these character pages?
They're at the beginning of the volumes.
Oh, the beginning, right?
They're not in the volume extras as they appear in the vault, but there is a free preview of the volume that includes those starting pages with the
Yeah, you'd look for that to get the different staff members, wouldn't you? I never look at those. Was
Ninomiya's squad in that same place last time? That's where the mistake was. In this character page?
Maybe, but Ninomiya would probably still be...
Yeah, he would be in the left side as the captain though, so I don't know why they made a mistake.
Speaking of Ninomiya squad, I found the comment interesting that it notes that it has a kitchenette, even though they are B rank. So I guess that's implying that the kitchenette is an A rank privilege, and that their team is essentially an A rank team in B rank clothing.
I mean, yeah, they were literally just demoted, and I guess people who have already made it to A rank do still retain some privileges regarding that.
No, you don't get Kinuta just marching into their office. It's right, that's enough. I'm taking the kitchenette. You don't get it anymore. Terashima, take it down. They just wheel it out.
Demolishing it all. Bringing a wrecking brawl.
And they just wheel it out on a forklift or something.
Yeah, so we continued to look at the rooms, and of course Hatahara was the one cleaning, but I guess the operator isn't expected to, so I guess it doesn't count as an Ashihara boomer moment. Although I think Ninomiya looks like he'd be a natural at cleaning. I imagine him with an apron and with some rubber gloves, and he looks perfect in this.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good look for him, and he seems like someone who would, value order and cleanliness. So it totally makes sense that he would be one to run a neat, tight ship.
I dig that Ninomiya squad's room screams, Hatahara was there, but now she's not. I wish you could tell me why.
And then meanwhile, Kazuma squad's room screams, Usami was there, and now she's not. I wish you could tell me why.
Oh.
Yeah, definitely. I did like that. It's a neat touch that the room is still organized as it was when Osamu was there. And of course, Kazama has fucking milk in his fridge.
Maybe if I drink enough of it, I'll finally grow tall enough.
Perfect. Of course, Ninamiya Squad has the fucking modern corporate look. It looks like those soulless interior design types that my mum likes. I don't care that white walls make the room look bigger, Mom. It's just overwhelming.
Yeah, very sparse.
Yeah, you gotta go for like a beige or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, like get some colors in there. Honestly,
I say that, I think the walls of my room might be white. I always viewed them as beige, but I guess they're not.
Well, in a certain light, they can come across as a different color.
Yeah, there are also different shades of white-looking paint, I guess.
so on the Miwa Squad side, Kadero want Fuck has an additional PC and desk in the room. What a fucking glasses-wearing nerd, honestly. I do like the quote from that page. Political power is tested when everyone goes there for tea. And of course, fucking nationalist Miwa would want a small Japanese-style room. Could have expected that. I think that's all I have, except I do find it amusing that we run out of the rooms now to comment on, so Ashihara instead, as some volume extras, has pages with the bags and holsters for the triggers. And I do love that on each page there is at least one instance of, you see? Perfect fit.
The 4 coma where they were asking about, like, what is the ball? What is the ball in Otoshidama? And the response was, they gotta be family jewels. And what? They're testicles? That was kind of funny.
Okay. It's not the sense of humor I really got.
But I like Yuma's responses, like, that's logical. I think that's funny. Like, they believed it.
It reminds me of that. It reminds me of that One Piece joke in Amazon Lily, where it's like Gintama for golden balls, and it's translated to family jewels. Wonder if it's the same original word.
I don't know. It's just I get the pun. I just don't get. I just don't get how the premise of the joke is funny. I guess I did like Yuma's reaction though.
In the character pages, I also like how Koarai is just named as Koala, like by his nickname instead of like his actual name. I like that Ashihara comments about, I was worried when introducing Anadora and his Anadorad form because, with him and Kenita in the same team, like, it's like 2 Moe mascot roles for competing with each other. I wonder if it's pandering to my readers too much.
So some Ashihara notes are just, with each word you don't know where the next line is going to go.
And I also like just commenting on the appearances of Okudera and Koarai, where it's like, one is rear cowlick and one is the forward cowlick of Asama's squad. I don't know if this is a trend in his character pages, but like, I'm not super big on like the fact that he points out the cup sizes of all the female characters in these. I think that's just kind of weird.
Oh no, did he do that again?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have the individual volumes, so we didn't get the character notes, but yeah, geez, we really don't need the sleazy comments, my dude.
Yeah.
Which one is that now?
This is Ozuma's squad, so like it's all the characters related to that, and then plus Anadora. But yeah, the rest of the descriptions are just funny comments in the vein of other characters. But like the last sentence of all of them is just pointing out their cup size, which I'm like, do we really need this?
At least give us Composed Beefcake's cup size as well, jeez.
Yeah, I want to see the cup size of like the hot male characters. Like,
we need to know about all of it, both the beef and the cakes.
Exactly.
I've noticed some hesitation in between that, but okay. Okay, shall we get to the spoiler corner?
Yeah.
Let's do it. So, one angle that I can see I don't agree, but I can sort of see the Osamu should get stronger argument is how you look at how Chika and his new tactics are introduced here, and Chika's weapon ends up being a temporary solution that is later rectified. So people might read that the fact that they were introduced at the same time, the same being true for Osamu. I think the real caveat there, though, is that, like, the Black Lightning is introduced with a lot of downsides, whereas the Spider description, I feel like, more so highlights the pros, and basically emphasizes that it's the perfect weapon for him.
I see. I never really thought about it that way, but because like for me it was just perfect. If Osamu gets some strategic tools to kind of still be at the same level while also finding some creative ways to be useful to the team, that was a perfect solution for me. And I didn't need anything else. But I guess if you go at it with a different mindset, I could see this point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I really like him learning the spider. I think it very fits Osamu. And the fact that he is never going to be like the ace of the team, he's never going to be like someone who is... Like, he should probably get stronger, but they have like kind of, a time limit. There's only so much more he can improve and get to a level to compete with like some of the other people in B rank. But if he can use his own skills effectively with Spider, and if he can be a great supporting player to the members of his team who are like the best at combat and getting points and stuff, I think that is the best move for him. So I really like this development for him.
Also, honestly, just give it time, guys. So we all know that Yuma is going to die and become a black trigger, and is going to be given to Osamu. So just give it time.
That is a very fandom request. not specifically needling the World Trigger fandom there, like as in loads of fandoms like stories to play out in that way.
Yeah, as a Usopp fan, I got used to that.
In hindsight, I think Hughes's "thanks for everything, big guy" at the time it could very much be read as like "goodbye, old friend," but I feel like it could actually be like "thanks for going along with my little scheme." Before
this read-through, I didn't understand the moment where Osamu asks, "Can you elaborate on that?" Regarding Anadora saying that Hughes is waiting for a chance to return home, even though he's behaving now. I thought it was kind of obvious, and this was kind of a moment that's supposed to Osamu's deep insight when it's not there. But what I was missing was that there is really some insight here. Like, Osamu is already thinking about Hughes's motivations, what he can do so that the goals align, rather than what he can leverage so he's forced to join the squad.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's taking important steps to fulfill his role as captain, which is, I think it's a really neat touch.
It was very perspective of Osamu, because, he could have just left it at, yeah, it makes sense why Hughes would want to go back to after Couture, like as a, hostage or whatever. But wait, no, why does he want to go back? Why would he jump at a chance to go back? By interrogating, like, kind of the nuance in what Adora was saying, and, like, asking and prying further, he was able to learn more useful information about Hughes and his circumstances that he can, use to his advantage when trying to recruit him to his team. So yeah, I think that's a very, very good moment of like Osamu being a little bit perceptive of like, hey, there's more going on here that I should inquire about.
I missed it the first time, but I really appreciate it now.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I alluded to before in terms of spoiler stuff is what I was paying attention to while reading this section was during Galapola's team meeting. I noticed that, a lot of the questions about like the specifics of the mission and what their goal was being asked by Ratarikov. And I think that was very pointed and very purposeful, considering what we know about him or what we learn about him later. And that he is a prince of Galapola who is kind of in hiding within this group. So, I think that, and obviously he and Gatlin have an understanding about that. And, like, I think that, yeah, he's the one who's, like, asking questions of, okay, what is our goal and what are we going to accomplish with this? Whereas the other members of the team are like, hey, why aren't we going to be taking hostages of our own? Why are we going to kidnap our own members of our own for like war glory or what stuff? Like, that's what I was paying attention to. If there were any seeds like setting up, hey, what is the relationship between these characters? Was there any hint of like the significance of this character later on? So I thought that there were some interesting seeds of that just in this conversation that were suddenly put there.
Yeah, you do have a really great point. Like, Rata, definitely, for his intentionally boring design, they do really draw attention to the fact that he does kind of take a leader in training role. He is still kind of fostered by Gatlin in that regard, but still makes some important decisions during the invasion. Also, I think that's a really clever misdirect is like having his design resemble Gatlin so much. Because you would think that, maybe these are like
father and son relatives.
Yeah, for father and son, are they related? He's a prince in hiding, so of course his design would be boring. Of course, he would kind of take these important decisions, and not because of nepotism, but because of monarchy, and an equally bad thing. So, Lum, do you have any thoughts on the newer chapters? I haven't seen you comment around on them much, but so I was really curious how you're finding the current arc.
I like them. I mean, basically, the current circumstances they're in now, like they have to live together in kind of a quarantine state, as a team for a little while, and then they have all these tasks that they have to do, and they have to like manage like their energy levels, the other triumph levels, and the resources and stuff. This basically reminds me of all the astronaut training in Space Brothers. And so it gives me a lot of that vibe. I think it is very much inspired by kind of like real life type of astronaut training kind of scenarios. But of course, with the sci-fi interest that the World Trigger has in its world and stuff. So I like it a lot. I think it's very interesting. I mean, I know the pace is slow for people because we get like one chapter a month and stuff, and it's like, oh, this chapter they have to answer, they have to fill out all these paperwork or do all these tests and stuff, and it's like, oh no, like Osamu can't use his computer because he ran out of try-on, so he has to make up for it the next day. I think that's fun. It's different from combat strategizing and training and stuff, but I enjoy this change of pace in the story. Like it's building up to this point of, hey, and on this away mission, you're going to have to learn to cooperate and collaborate with different people from the people you're used to. You're going to have to learn how to manage your resources and your time effectively. So I think that there are interesting stuff being done here that I think is going to pay off later on. And so I've been enjoying them a lot, honestly.
Okay, that's all my notes, so let's interview Lum.
Alright, first question, and an important one. How, Lum, did you get into World Trigger?
I got into World Trigger, I think, in the same way you guys did, because we're all fans of WMR, and, they started covering on the show when it started running in Shonen Jump Alpha.
Now it's the Shonen Jump Sigma.
Yeah. Shonen Jump Omega, like everything is there almost. Well, not everything. It's still on High Shield 21 or Yu Yu Hakusho, but one day. But yeah, I was just listening to them talk about it. This was before I had subscribed to Jump itself, so I was not following along stuff that was being published in This Is Jump, but I heard their discussions of World Trigger chapters, and especially as they got more and more hyped about it and into it, especially when the invasion started, that's what intrigued me into finally checking out the series for myself. And this was still before I had purchased Jump, so I couldn't purchase the back issues, so I did have to rely on scans at the time, and the scans of the series were behind a significant bit of where Wiz's Jump was, I remember. So there was still a gap where there were newer chapters that hadn't been scanlated, but Wiz had translated. But yeah, eventually I was able to close that gap, and then eventually I did start subscribing to Jump, and then I continued to follow the series from there on out. And that basically is how I got into World Trigger. It really is thanks to the enthusiasm that Chris and Nick had for it on WMR. After starting from a place of really not liking it.
Just maybe compare it with Chris and Nick's opinions and first opinions on the series in general similar, or as they started to notice the promise of it. How did you like initially the series, and how did it change?
I certainly did not dislike it nearly as much as they did. at the beginning. I thought it was a pretty enjoyable read. I did like that Osamu was a more kind of grounded protagonist who, isn't the most powerful guy in the room, but he is smart and he has a good heart. I think Yuma is a good contrast to him in terms of, or at least a compliment to him, rather than contrast, as someone who is capable, but kind of needs a partner to also help them achieve their mutual goals. And I thought that the series was building up its storyline pretty well early on. I think what I would agree is that when they do introduce Yuma's backstory, that around chapter 20 or so, that is, and when they start going to Border HQ and start trying to work up the ranks, and then of course when the invasion happens, I think once that stuff starts happening, that's when World Trigger really, really picks up. And yeah, I do think once you reach the point of the invasion, that is such a great arc, and then that continues into the B rank wars, which is also such an awesome kind of mix of a sports manga with a battle manga with a gaming type of aesthetic to it. So I think World Trigger really does become something special. But yeah, I think I wasn't really low on it ever. I always thought, oh, this is pretty interesting. I think these characters are pretty likable. But yeah, I do think there is a point where it becomes especially interesting, kind of around the same point I think a lot of people would recognize.
Who are your favorite characters in World Trigger?
Well, I like all our main characters. I definitely share in the Osamu love. I'm number 55 in the Osamu fan club.
Number 69 here.
Nice! Yeah, Osamu is a great protagonist. Like I mentioned before, what I appreciate about Osamu, contrast to other jump leads, is that he's not the strongest guy, and he probably will never be the strongest guy, but that's okay, because he strategizes and is able to smartly use the skills he does have. Eventually, he's not perfect at them at first, and he takes work, but he's really is able to grow capably as a leader and as a strategist in a really satisfying way. I also really love Chika's arc of, she has all this great power with all this Tryon she has, but she has this struggle, this block of not wanting to hurt people, not wanting, even in training, even in this practice setting of the rank wars, not wanting to see them get exploded or maimed and whatnot. But I like her growth to kind of try and get over that and then learn other skills to help kind of cope with that and help her continue to do what she needs to do to help support her team. So I appreciate that her character a lot too. But I guess to talk about maybe a character that is not a conventional favorite, I really appreciate Katori and how just a very terrible leader she is, a very terrible team player she is, and she's so selfish and so bratty. But I think it is interesting, when we see the backstory she has with Hana, and then Hana is the person who kind of had all this tragedy on her, and it seems like Katori was motivated to join Birder to try, and with her together, help kind of get revenge or enact change or whatever, but she is just completely in her own selfish ways and can't really break out of them. So she kind of loses sight of that. And then also, when she does, eventually try to let someone else take the lead in her team, that doesn't pan out really, and then she kind of has to double back on being the leader again. So I think Katori is a fun character. I also just think her design is fun too.
Her dysfunction is really fascinating to watch, if anything.
Yeah. I also think Nasu's squad is pretty cool. I know people criticize their outfits or whatever, but I think they have a nice camaraderie with each other. And it was kind of a nice sentiment that because one of their teammates was going to go away, they really wanted to give it their all and give it their best in the rank wars, make it as far as possible and stuff, because, it was their last chance to be a team all together. So I thought they had a sweet story, and I think Nasu has a really cool fight against the female member of the Gawapola invasion team in that arc. And yeah, Hyusei and Yotaro also have a really fun rapport with each other, as we see in this volume and this stretch of the story. And then I think Hyusei is a very interesting kind of wildcard character to have joined Tamakomo 2, and I think it plays well in the dynamic.
If you could choose your own personalized trigger activation catchphrase and gesture, as it can be done, as the volume extras have told us, what would it be?
Let's get triggy with it!
Oh, I love it. Oh, I think this must be the best one yet.
Yes, absolutely.
And then I guess I'll make a pose like, I don't know, Bobobo when he's like using fist and nose hair or something. Or like the dance that they do. There's this dance that Don Patch does when he's trying to make fun of like Loincloth Lloyd, where he's like Loincloth, gasser. Maybe I'll do that. I don't know, just something super silly.
Oh God. I want to see that in the series itself. Please, Ashihara, now that you've made World Trigger slice of life comedy, I want to see that. Alison, at Meowth900 on Twitter, I remember her being in Drowning in Manga.
Oh, she does the Dumb Weaves podcast with V-Lord, Laser Kid, a bunch of friends of ours.
She asks, what do you guys think still keeps World Trigger hype in English-speaking anime and manga communities?
I think it's efforts like your guys' podcast, like Ace's Unofficial Islamic Fan Club, WMR, like the fact that communities have kind of formed around World Trigger and like Ashihara, and there's a bunch of conversation, discussion about the series, a bunch of theorizing, fan efforts like your guys' World Trigger Bridged, this podcast. I think those are like what keeps the community going, and especially during that 2-year break from the series where Ashihara was taking care of his health. I mean, I think the fact that there was a community that kind of banded together to like send him care packages and messages of support, I think it's just the fact that this, is a series that just has a lot to offer and speculate about the kind of lore of the world, the mysteries of the world, theorizing about different characters, that kind of engenders just a lot of creativity in the community and a lot of passion from it.
The care packages and the letters, that was really wholesome, and Ace organized it all, I think. So a while ago, I think I would have said Ace single-handedly.
Yeah.
Like, one of the most exciting things recently is probably the latter seasons of the anime, without a doubt. Like, we have kind of mentioned the manga has been it's been a very low stakes point recently. It's largely been sort of minutiae focused training arcs, whereas the anime has been giving us some of the highlights of the series done so much justice recently, and I see a lot of hype for each new episode that comes out.
Mm-hmm.
Places like the World Trigger Discord are definitely putting in the work to keep the discussion around the series going. I would say that's right now, at least around my bubble, like the World Trigger hype is slightly in decline. People definitely aren't responding well to like when a series has a genre shift, it usually doesn't bother me whenever a series does something different. I probably would have enjoyed it in another series, so why don't I just enjoy what we have?
I mean, I'm reading JoJo Leon, and I understand that response to JoJo Leon, for quite a few reasons, is very, very divided and a little lukewarm. And a lot of, not all, but a lot of complaints I hear do kind of highlight how it doesn't have a very clear villain-hero dynamic, and it has a lot of kind of side tangents. And granted, I'm only a third of the way through, this might change, but I definitely think an element of it is that the last part beforehand, Steel Ball Run, is a massive high-stakes epic that just keeps ramping up as it goes along.
It's kind of a similar situation between like part 3 and 4.
Yes, definitely. And so far I'm really enjoying it, and I am enjoying the lower stakes exploration of smaller environments, eccentricities vibe that JoJo Leon has. But like I said, I'm only a third of the way through. My thoughts might change as it goes.
Mm-hmm.
I think through the hiatus, that like the quality of the series itself was definitely the factor that's like kept the fandom going.
Mm-hmm.
We did take a break in a very like cliffhangery like moment, didn't we?
Yeah.
No, it was the one in the big shopping mall. It was just before it, so they kind of came back during the explanation of what the match was going to be.
Everyone was still hyped to see, oh shit, what is Hughes going to be like?
Yeah, and they just introduced like the senior members of the Tamakoma branch, and the revelation that Kido used to be a member of, well, I guess it's a spoiler, but
I feel like we should just move this whole interview section to the spoiler corner.
probably a good idea.
Oh, no, that's just what I think is, because it left off, I think, like, literally last panel was Osamu noticing that Kido was in the group photo of the Brass Tamakoma branch team. It's like, what? And I think it was like, yeah, I think that kind of cliffhangers like that, like all this setup and then like leading to this point of like, wait, so there's a lot more going on with these characters to explore, lots of mysteries here. Like I think that kept people tearizing and kept them like so eager to see the series return to answer some of those questions and then see what happens next.
If the pacing of the series drastically accelerates to like skip over recent parts that the people are finding boring, I definitely think that we'll see the dip in the hype cemented, since I've got the feeling that if the framing suggests that we shouldn't really care about Border, what it says about all these characters and interacting, building up the relationship between different members of the squads, if we just skip over that, but I think we might see the dip in the hype to the series cemented.
I mean, I don't really know what I'm not really clear on what like the Japanese readership's response to the current stuff is. If they are just willing to go along with the ride of whatever Ashihara is willing to do, or if they are starting to get impatient, like some of the English-speaking readership are. I have my own mixed feelings on the current chapters, but I would like to get to those when we get to the current chapters. So yeah. Okay, and I guess a final question, Lum, what is your favorite moment in the series?
Well, I guess it's kind of basic, but the end of the invasion is like such a big, high, dramatic moment of like, someone abandoning his Trian body to just, and then getting impaled basically in his real body, and then a replica is kind of sacrificed there. Big emotional stakes moments, but I also like that's the conference afterwards, where they have to kind of explain all the damage to the press and whatever, and then Osamu makes a stand, and then I like his mother coming in at that moment too. That was pretty good. So I like that stretch of the story a lot. And it's also very satisfying, of course, at the end of the rank wars to see Tamakoma 2 finally come on top of everything that kind of learned and trained as we kind of see develop in this volume. So I thought that was really satisfying too. And as was like when, and this is also later in the Scalapola arc, but when, Yotaro goes to confront Hyusei when Hyusei is like trying to make his escape and like that, and I like the payoff to their relationship a lot too. Oh man, I mean, also talking about the Goku arc, like I did mention, I really like Nasu's fight against Wen Li, I think is her name, but like
Wen Saw, I think.
Wen Saw, but like that visual of like when they land the finishing blow on her. That is just an image that sticks in my mind. It's like one of the coolest dramatic finishes of a World Trigger fight for me. So yeah, that's another moment I really love.
It is a great visual, yeah. That's all the questions, so shall we do the round off?
Let's do it.
Okay, so that is going to do it for the 14th episode of Duckface Diaries. You can listen to us on so many podcast hosting sites, Anchor, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Breaker, Overcast, Radio Public, Pocket Cast, Podbay, Player FM, Listen Notes, Castro, Google Podcasts, Anchor.fm/Wensleydale Cheddar, YouTube.com/C/Wensleydale Cheddar is where all the links are. Also on Patreon.com/Wensleydale Cheddar in the pinned post. Remember that much like the neighborhood, the YouTube algorithm is a dark abyss of sorrows and woes from which channels like these never resurface, and what helps us navigate it is liking, subscribing, and sharing the podcast with a friend. On the YouTube channel and the same RSS feed, you get access to not only Duckface Diaries, but Manga Mosaic, a collection of podcasts and video essays on other manga titles, short and long alike. And on the same YouTube channel, but a different RSS feed, probably, you get access to Podcast Mon Adventures, our new retrospective podcast, where we cover the Pokemon special manga, arc by arc, along with the host of the Pink Ale Pod, Henry Kathman. Lum, where can people find you?
You can find me at LumRanmaYasha on Twitter, LumRanmaYasha variety places, like Animation Revelation, AniList, wherever there's LumRanmaYasha, that's you can find me. You can read my manga reviews on ODAR.com. We got a lot of books coming in, a lot of reviews coming out. You can look forward to more on there. That's where you can find our podcasts, including our main one, Manga Marix. We've had both Wensleydale and Hoven on. the show, and it's a great show. We talk about manga as a medium and as an industry. We cover a bunch of series we love, do retrospectives on them, review new up-and-coming series we want to spotlight, interview guests from the manga industry and just from the community. So it's a real fun one, and you can find that on any podcast platform you can think of as well, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and the like. You can follow us on Twitter at Manga_Mavericks, and we're also on YouTube as well. And I also do a few other podcasts like Lum Squad, the Yurushigatsu focused podcast I do with my good friend Andrea Yoshimura. We cover the wonderful wacky world of Rumiko Hagashi's Yurushigatsu, covering Mrs. New releases of manga, the movies now that they're on Crunchyroll. We're having a lot of fun time doing that, and you can find that also on Apple Podcasts, every podcast platform you can think of, and you can follow us on Twitter at Lum_Squad. If you like the art I draw for my podcast, and also just the illustrations, animations I make in general, you can find all that on my Instagram at ZArtworks.
Alrighty then. Do you have a patron? Pimp it out, yeah.
Oh, yes. If you would like to support our shows, help us produce podcasts and pay for materials and hosting costs and the like, we have a Patreon for Manga Mavericks, our network of podcasts, patreon.com/Manga Mavericks. And yeah, we also have a bonus pod next month since we're doing an NHA themed, or rather a Koi or Hikoshi themed month next month in September. Like, our bonus pod for that will be, like, discussing the original, like, MHA prototype one-shot, as well as, like, our good friend Maxie's thoughts on Barrage, which they infamously have very negative feelings towards. So that'll be an interesting one. Yeah.
Oh.
Interesting. The Shonen Flop Bunch did not like that at all either.
Yeah, I'm going to be curious, because we are also doing an episode on Barrage with Chris and Nick from Weekly Manga Recap that we'll be recording soon. Might be out soon by the time you're listening to this. So yeah, we'll see, like, because I remember they were super positive on it early on. We'll see, like, how Barrage holds up when revisiting. And if you want a more negative take on it, you can subscribe to our Patreon, because I don't know if Maxie's feelings will have changed for the more positive, so that'll be interesting.
Oh, wow. Yeah, looks like it's going to be interesting. I'm really looking forward to that one. So, now, Hoven, plug our sister show.
HOVIN'S Hideaway on all sorts of podcast platforms. It's a podcast that discusses mainly just the ending of a big arc or a manga that I've been keeping up with, that other people I podcast with have been keeping up with, and very, very rarely talking about other stuff. I mainly do tabletop RPGs and post to Twitter nowadays. Do you want to plug that?
We'll plug the Twitters at the end, but if you'd like to help me upload these podcasts on a regular basis, consider supporting me on patreon.com/Wensleydale Cheddar. In return for your support, you get access to rewards such as adding your name to the YouTube credits or getting a World Trigger Duckface avatar. Help me reach goals such as reviving World Trigger Bridge. Each time we hit a milestone, I will be making a new episode of that. Once we hit that goal, I'll restart work on it promptly. Send us emails, questions, comments, suggestions, and Wensleydale012@gmail.com. Mostly I get spam on this email now, and I find it really amusing. One of these days we're going to record a bonus pod reading through all these emails, maybe.
Hot MILFs in my area?
What?
Again?
I don't know if this is a particularly well-triggered question. Okay, or follow us on Twitter at Duckface Diaries, or individual Twitters at Wesley Cheddar, at Hoven with an H, and at LumRanmaYasha, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at Manga_Mavericks is the Manga Mavericks podcast Twitter.
Yes.
A sincere thank you to Milo Jack Stilitz, who composed our ending theme, an orchestral rendition of Gira Giri, the first opening sequence for World Trigger. You can find his work at soundcloud.com/Milo Jack Stilitz. And what are we covering next time?
Next time, we'll be covering volume 15 of World Trigger, which contains chapters 125 to 133, and the anime covers that across season 2, episodes 1 to 4, with some overlap with both this and the volume after. The anime is very, very streamlined from here on.
Okay, there we go. It's still around 4 episodes, but the base hasn't changed much.
It's like the last, 5 minutes of episode 1, and then, the first tiny bit of episode 4, the first tiny bit of episode 4. So yeah, at some point we'll get a smaller chunk, I'm sure.
I see. Okay then. Well, in that case, Lum, it was great to have you on. We'd love to have you on again.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. And this was the 14th episode of Duckface Diaries. And as always, it's time to
Bugger off!